In this video, I will show you how to solve this React interview question, which is a dynamic folder tree. Here, as you can see, we have these folders and they are completely expandable. When you click on them, you can display the files that are inside and also the folders as well. If you click on the folder inside the folder, we can display what's inside. We are going to create this from absolute scratch and I will walk you through the entire process. So if you get this question asked in an interview, you are going to absolutely nail it. So let's get into it. So before we start, here I have my empty React project with Tailwind inside, and I also opened this project on the browser using npm run dev. If you don't know how to create an empty project like this from scratch, I will leave a link in the description for you. This is the official documentation of Tailwind. Here in this page, you can learn how to create a React project with Tailwind inside using Vite. So if you follow these steps, you're gonna be able to create the project in a minute. It's a really quick process. Also, here I have the finished version as well. In case if I need to show you something visually, I will come back to this one. So we can start by making this div a background. Let me zoom in a little bit. Inside this div, we only gonna have the folder tree component, and to center it, let's make it a flex container, items center, justify center. Let's make it cover the entire page by setting it to minimum h screen. That means minimum height 100 VH. Let's set the width to 100% and set a background gradient to right from slate 800 to slate 950. Inside, we're gonna have this div. Let's set the width to 400 pixels. This is the div that we are going to display the component. Let's give it some rounded corners, background white, padding 5, and let's give it a drop shadow 2x large. Inside, let's have a h1 that says folder tree. Let's create some space at the bottom, margin bottom 6. Center the text. Let's set the font to mono, make the text bigger, and make the font weight bold. And under this h1, you're gonna have the component folder tree. Let's go inside the project, and inside the source folder, let's create the component folder tree.jsx. Inside this empty JSX file, I can use rafce to create a React arrow function. To be able to use that shortcut, you need to install this extension called React Snippets. After you install this, you're going to be able to use rafce, and there is a bunch of other shortcuts as well. You can check it out. As you can see, the function also has the name of the folder as well. So we are not going to change this one. Let's come back into app.jsx and put this component in. Don't forget to import it. And now here you can see the component. We can close app.jsx. So before we can display some folders and files, first we need some folders and files, and we are going to create that on our own. Let's create an array named folders. Inside this folders array, we're going to have 5 objects, which we are going to display as folders. Let's create the first one. So every single folder is going to have 2 properties, the name and the children. So children is basically going to be the files that are inside this folder, and the name is just the name of the folder. Children is going to be an array because we are going to be displaying files. They are also going to be objects, and we can display objects inside an array. So let's create a file. Files are just going to have names and types. So the name of this file, let's say index.html, we are basically going to imitate a React project structure, and the type is going to be a file. We can just copy and paste this for the second file. Let's change this to styles.css. Type is going to be a file. And now we have the first file. Let's create the second one. Name is going to be the src folder, so the source folder. So inside the source folder, unlike the first one, we are not just going to have a file, we are also going to have a folder. So just like we create a folder like this using a object, name, and a children, inside the children, we are going to do the same. Let's create a object, give the folder a name, components, type is going to be folder, and now inside this folder, just like this parents folder, we're going to have a children, and this children is going to have two objects, so two files inside, just like this one. So we can copy and paste this. So since this is a React project, let's change the names like component names, footer.jsx. So now this is one folder, and right under this folder we can create a file named app.jsx, and here we have the second one. So if you take a look at the finished version, with this we have created these first two folders. We have the project files folder. Inside we have index.html, styles.css, and here we have these files as children's. Inside the source, as children, we have a component folder. As you can see, if I click on it, there are the other children elements, which are header.jsx and footer.jsx files. And outside this component, but still inside the source folder, we have the app.jsx. Let's create the next folder by copy and pasting this, and change this one to assets. The name of this folder is going to be images. Type is folder. We don't need a second children for this. So since this is inside the assets folder, let's name this logo.png. And let's turn this file into a second folder. And this folder is not going to have any files inside, so we can leave this children array empty. Let's change this to fonts. Let's create the next one by copying pasting this first one. And the last one as well. Let's change this one to documents. And this final one. And now, with this done, we have a folder structure inside the array that we can display. We have the nested files and folders. We have created this exact same structure. Next, let's use the map method to map over this array and display the folders inside the component. Let's delete this text. Let's give this div some rounded corners, a border, and padding of 4. Inside this div, let's open up a set of curly braces and map over the folders array. And for every single folder, we are going to display a div. And inside every div that we create, we are going to display the folder's name now. And as you can see, we have the folder names, project files, source, assets, docs, and tests. We cannot go inside the files now. We cannot open and close them because we don't have the logic to do that now. For now, we are going to leave it like this. Next, we are going to create two functions. One of them is going to be responsible for opening and closing these folders in order to display what's inside them. And the second function is basically going to decide what we are displaying. Like if it's going to be a folder, we're going to have this emoji. And if it's opened, as you may notice, the emoji changes to a open folder emoji. And if it's a file, we are going to display this emoji. Also, inside that second function, we're going to create a dynamic padding for levels of this nested structure. So this is level 0, and if you open a folder, these files are not displayed directly under the folder. We have some indentation on the left, and if you go even deeper, the indentation gets also bigger. We're going to have the logic for that as well inside the second function. So let's create that first function that is going to open and close the folders. Opening and closing a folder basically means changing the state. So if the folder is closed, it is in the closed state, and if it's open, it's the open state. So to create states and update the states, we will use the useState hook at the top of this folder tree component. Let's create a state variable named openFolders and a setter function named setOpenFolders. And these are going to be objects, so let's put a empty object inside the current state. Also, my VS Code automatically imports useState at the top. If that doesn't happen for you, you need to import useState at the top like this. So this openFolders is basically an object that is going to keep track of the open folders and the closed folders. And at the beginning, every single folder is going to be closed. And when you click on them, you're going to be able to open a folder. And the way that we are going to change the states from closed to open is by using this setter function. This function is basically responsible for updating the state inside this state variable. Let's say you want to open this folder and it is currently closed. So this folder being closed is basically stored as a state inside this open folder object. And we're going to create a function that is basically going to flip that state from closed to open. So under this array, let's create that function. Let's name it toggle folder. It is going to take the folder that you click on as the parameter. And as I said, using the setter function, so set open folders, we are going to change the previous state. We are going to be doing it inside the object because the state is stored in an object. So this prev is short for previous, since we are going to change the previous state. So inside this array, we have 5 folders. And to specifically change only one of these folders' state, first we need to spread all the existing states. And then we are going to select the folder name that you clicked on. And we are going to flip the previous state of that folder. And this is the logic to open and close a folder out of this array. So let me go over this one more time real quick. This is a function that basically flips the state of a folder from closed to open. We have the folder name as the parameter, which is basically the folder that you're going to click on. And let's say that folder is closed. We use the setter function to update this open folders object which currently have all the states for all the folders, and they are all closed at the beginning. Let's say you're going to open this tests folder. So since all the files are closed, we don't want to change all of the files from closed to open by just clicking on one of them. When we click on one folder, we just want to change this state, and to prevent all the states from changing, so this spread preview is basically displaying all of these folders as closed, and the folder that we clicked on, which in this example the tests folder, is also closed, but by using this exclamation mark we set it to opposite of closed, which will be open. And now we're going to use this toggle folder function inside the second function named render item. So this is the function that is going to render the folders and files with emojis and indentations. We're basically going to have all the nesting logic inside this component. As the parameter, there are going to be two parameters, item and level, and level is going to be set to 0. This level is basically the indentation level. We are basically going to change the indentation using this level. Let's say padding left, use backticks, and $ curly braces. We are going to multiply that level by 20, and this is going to be pixels. So let me show you what this means. Right now, these folders are at the level 0. As you can see, there is no padding on the left. And if I click on one folder and go inside, as you can see, these files are displayed on the right, so there is some padding on the left. This is level 1, and if you put 1 inside this level and multiply it by 20, that means on the level 1, for every single folder, there is 20 pixels of padding on the left. If you go level 2, by clicking a folder inside a folder and put 2 inside this level, there is going to be 40 pixels of padding in total, and this is how it works. Next, we need to distinguish if we are displaying a file or a folder. So if we only have a type inside these objects, type folder, type file, and we can use that. If item.type is equal to file, we are going to return this div. We also need to provide a key. So let's say item name. And inside this div, we're going to have two span elements. One for displaying the icon and one for displaying the file's name. So item.name. Let's style this div. Flex center. Rounded corners. Padding on the left and right 2. Padding Y 1. Let's make the icon larger. And when you hover over this, you're gonna get a background gray of 100. And to be able to have this dynamic indentation, I'm gonna set the style to padding left. Let's also create some space between the icon and the text. So margin left 2. So that was for if we are displaying a file. If it's not a file, we are going to be displaying a folder. So under this if statement, we are going to have the original return for this component. And we are going to be returning another div for the folders, just like we did with the files. The key is going to be item name again. We're going to have a div, and this div is going to display the folder's name and the folder emoji, depending on if the folder is open or closed. Let's style this div. Flex cursor pointer. This is going to indicate that this is something clickable. Center the items. Rounded corners, padding X 2 and padding Y1. When you hover over it, gonna have the same hover effects. And for the indentation, we're gonna have the padding left again. And now we can use this toggle folder function using a onClick event handler, using a anonymous function. Let's fire that function every time you click on this div, and we're gonna pass the item name. Inside, we're gonna have two spans, one for displaying the icon and one for displaying the item name. Inside this first span, we're gonna select the array and the current folder, and if it's open, we're gonna display this open folder emoji, and if it's closed, going to display this closed folder emoji. Let's style the name, margin left 2 to put some space between the emoji and the text, text large, and font medium. So inside this main div, but outside this one, we are going to have the logic to display what's inside the folder. So on the open folders array, I'm gonna pass the current item's name, and if there is children inside that array, so some of these folders, as you can see, the source folder has children, and inside the children we have this array, and inside the array there are objects as files and folders, but there are also folders with no children elements inside, such as this one. This fonts folder has a empty children array. So if there is no children inside the folder, we are not going to display anything. But if there are children elements, then we are going to display this div. And inside this div, we are going to map over the children element, just like we map over the folders array itself. Open up a set of curly braces, item.children, and we're gonna map over the children's array. And for every child element, we're gonna use the render item function itself. And this function is basically the current function that we are in. This is something called recursion. If you use the function that you create inside that function itself, means the function is recursive. So inside the render item function, we use the render item function, and we are going to pass the child as the item, and we're also going to pass a level, and the level is going to be level +1. That means if we go one level inside, this is going to create more indentation using this padding left dynamic text. So if it's level 1 and you go display children elements inside a folder, that means you go one level deeper. So that's why the +1. If it's level 1, it is going to be level 2, and the padding on the left will be increased. And now that every single logic is done, we can update this folders map by deleting this div. We can use render item and pass the folder inside. And here, as you can see, we have the folders. Let's see if everything is working fine. When I click on the folder, we display the files. And here we have another folder. Let's click on the folder inside the folder. And we can also display one level more inside. The indentations are correct. The folders and files are working fine. And this is it. Before we finish, I will do a quick recap of everything we did to avoid any confusions. So first, inside the app.jsx file, we have created this flex container to center this div. So this div is basically this white background container that you see on the screen. We have styled it a little bit. We have the h1 and the component that has all the nesting structure inside. Let's click on it. First, we have created all the folders and the files that are inside them using an array. Once we created all the nested folder and file structure, we created this function named toggle folder to be able to change the state of these folders from closed to open or open to close. Using the useState hook, we keep track of the states of the folders, and using the setOpenFoldersSetter function, we update the states. Inside this block, we spread the previous states and we flip the state of the one that you clicked on. Next, we have this render item function that basically distinguishes between the files and folders. If the item that you clicked on is a file, we return this div with this file icon, the file name. Also, we have this level parameter to decide how much padding on the left there is going to be, depending on the nested structure. If you are on level 0, there is no padding on the left, and when you go one level deeper, there is padding on the left. If you go further, the level increases, and that increases the padding on the left. If the file is a folder, we display the folder icon depending on if it's closed or not. We have the same indentation logic going on. And if the folder that you clicked on has children elements inside, then we display this div to map over the children element to display them. Here we use recursion. We have the render item function inside the render item function to be able to render the items inside this current folder's children, and we go one level deeper to create indentation. And finally, we map over the folders array, passing the folder as the parameter. We render the items using the render item function. So this is how we can create this nested folder structure using React and Tailwind. I hope you guys find it helpful and enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.